Da, 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 da. Hey everyone, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. Before I introduce today's special guest, I just want to let you guys know that my new book, the 10th anniversary edition of Unprocessed, is now available for pre-orders on Amazon. Even though it says temporarily out of stock, you can still pre-order. If you do, save your receipt, and if that's Amazon, just you can take a screenshot because we'll soon provide an email address that if you send us that receipt, we're going to give you incredible amount of bonuses. What's different about this 10th anniversary edition is one, color photos by Hannah Kaminsky, two, a brand new foreword by Dr. John McDougall, and three, 30 new recipes. And all the original recipes will have alternates for things that are high in fat, like nuts, to make them lower in fat if you choose. So I really appreciate it when you get it. Thank you so much. It's also endorsed by three wonderful doctors this time. Dr. Colin Campbell, Dr. Neil Barnard, and Dr. Will Bolshewitz. So without further ado, we have today's special guest talking about a really interesting subject. It's a bit weight loss, but she's going to talk about the missing piece, which is, you're going to have to stay tuned to find out. Please welcome Dr. Sobia Mirza. It's so nice to meet you. I think you were referred by Dr. Kofi Essel.
That's right. It's so nice to meet you, and what a pleasure it is to be here.
I can't wait to hear your story. I mean, I know a little bit about it because I watched a bunch of your YouTubes, but I'm not sure all my audience is familiar with you. So tell us who you are, what you do, and why you do it.
Sure. So I'm based in the Washington, D.C. area, and I'm actually one of those physicians who has multiple different specialties. So I originally trained in pediatric radiology, which is the medical imaging of babies all the way up to young adults. And it was during that training, after my first year of practicing medicine, that I felt terrible and was unhealthy and was eating poorly, not exercising, not taking care of myself, not getting sleep. And I discovered lifestyle medicine through a film that you're probably familiar with, Forks Over Knives, like many people did. I watched this movie and overnight said, I need to go plant-based. I need to get control of my health and my lifestyle. So I did what I actually advise patients not to do, which is to make that transition overnight. Because if you're eating this omnivorous standard American diet, the gut microbiome needs some time to actually adjust to getting all those whole plant foods in. So I overwhelmed my system and I had to back up and start over. So I had to eat everything again. And then slowly over time, cut out the meat, cut out the cheese, the yogurt was probably the hardest, chicken, fish, one thing at a time until I became vegan. And I had some amazing benefits to my health right away. So I lost that 10% of my body weight that I had gained during my first year of medical training. It came off just like that from switching my diet without even exercising. I felt better mentally, I had more energy. I wanted to exercise, so I explored exercising, and I'm just a huge fitness buff today, which is not what I would have expected, 10 years ago. And as I became more whole foods plant-based, so swapping out those vegan foods, which I know you talk about those processed vegan foods, and doing more whole plant foods, not being afraid of the sugar and fruit and things like that. I had so many beneficial health effects. So I used to take so many medications for asthma, including steroids, steroid pills, steroid inhalers, steroids up my nose, you name it, I'm off of all of it. For asthma, don't take anything anymore. My gastroesophageal reflux is under control from lifestyle changes and understanding what are the triggers, including stress, which is often overlooked. So learning how to control that and what I couldn't eat. And again, weight management, because I had obesity and overweight as a child, and it's something that I have struggled with into adulthood. And now when I tell people, oh, I used to have obesity as a child, no one can believe it, because it's not an issue anymore. And I'm sure you get the same response when you meet people who are really just shocked because you were able to make those changes. So I went on, became a radiologist as I am, and I'm still practicing today, but I realized that, I can share this information with other people, and I can help other people in a way that I was able to help myself through the work of some of the physicians who you mentioned for your book on Processed, but also the makers of the film who really had quite an impact on me.
I listened to your story on YouTube about being overweight as a child. And one thing that really resonated with me is you mentioned that you used to ask your mom if you could have a cookie or something. And then at one point she said, you don't have to ask anymore.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of when I was little, because I was obese from the age of 5. My mom used to be on a bowling league, and she didn't want to be annoyed with me. And so she set up a charge account at the little gift shop, and I could just go and get candy whenever I wanted. And I'm thinking, that's not such a great thing for a 5-year-old.
Yeah, it's good and it's bad, right? Because we want to teach children to have some sort of autonomy and decision-making ability, but like at what age is that appropriate? And also, what are the habits that have been instilled? What's been in place in the home since childhood? And so if the lesson or the teaching and the modeling from the parents has been that vegetables are icky and we don't like them and we like cakes and cookies, then that's what the child is going to learn to eat. And that's exactly what happened when I was young. My parents are immigrants from Pakistan, and they had this amazing diet rich in vegetables, but moving to the US and this influx of processed foods and meat, especially being associated with prosperity and wanting to treat your child and wanting to give them cookies and cakes, it just became this pattern. And once mom said, you can just help yourself, that was it for me.
I know. And that's free reign, right?
Yes. So I really had to learn how to get that under control. And it took a lot of work and many years.
Did you ever hear about a plant-based or vegan diet before seeing Forks Over Knives?
Probably not. I grew up as semi-vegetarian because in the school that I went to, my parents wanted to make sure that I was eating only halal meat. So being raised in a Muslim household, you want to make sure the meat is coming from a certain place, prepared a certain way. And so I was always vegetarian at school, but as I grew older, I realized, I can just, it's fine. I'll eat the meat that I want. So I had this idea of vegetarianism, but if I had even heard of veganism or being plant-based, I would have thought it was outrageous, really out there.
Wow, that's it. But you're also board certified in obesity medicine, which is a relatively new, what do you call it?
Specialty. Yeah.
Specialty. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
exactly. Yeah. So my board certifications are also in, like you said, obesity medicine and lifestyle medicine, which is also a really new specialty. And these are considered subspecialties. So you can enter into obesity or lifestyle medicine from so many different medical backgrounds. You don't have to have a specific type of training, for example, medicine or surgery. And you do the training, you do the courses and the lectures, and you learn and do the certifications, and then you have that ability to practice at a really subspecialist level to give expert care to patients.
Wow. Yeah. So do you work with people virtually, in person?
Yeah, I'll tell you about my clinic. So I have a clinic in the DC area in Sterling, Virginia, and there's a physical location where I can see people who are in the area, but I also do online, and I am licensed in like a dozen plus different states where I can see patients. You just have to be physically located in one of those states, and the clinic is called Planted Health. And I know we're going to link to the information in the show notes here. So that's where people can find me. And as long as you're located in one of those states, I can see you virtually.
Right. Or even if you're willing to travel to the state,
Yeah.
even for the appointment. I heard you can actually do that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That is so cool. So that's amazing. Do you think that you're so interested in weight loss because of what you experienced as a child?
Oh, absolutely. Because I feel, I remember growing up and feeling that shame and that guilt, and that segues into what I wanted to talk about today is that feeling of judgment, right? And so I remember even as a young child, struggles with weight, conversations with family members, teasing each other, making fun of each other, using the F word, fat, which is one that I can't handle anymore. And we need to just have a nicer way to talk to each other about this that removes that guilt and that shame and that judgment. But even as a young child, I can remember those conversations with the pediatrician. I remember the pediatrician saying to my mom in the appointment, hey, we don't have to lose weight yet, but let's just make sure she doesn't gain anymore. Right. And so as a child, taking those conversations with you, it stays with you for so many years. And so I really want us to shift the conversation and think more about empathy and compassion. So empathy as physicians, right? As physicians, we can practice empathy towards our patients and ourselves. And as people who might be struggling with weight or other health conditions, compassion for ourselves, right? And so empathy is this idea in healthcare of, exploring somebody's circumstances, their mental state and viewpoint, but also maintaining that you're not that person. So thinking, how does that person feel? How do they think? What's their construct that they're operating in? But not going to the point where I'm seeing myself as that person, right? So that's what we can do as physicians. And then compassion that we can have for ourselves as people who are struggling with health is this idea of unconditional love and acceptance. And that's really where it starts. And I think, unfortunately, we have it backwards these days.
Yeah. But how do you, as a physician, how do you broach it? Because obviously if somebody is overweight or has obesity, you don't want to just not say anything, right? I mean, you want to help them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, first of all, it comes back to the doctor-patient relationship. So the doctor-patient relationship is based on trust, right? And you can leverage that trust that a patient has in you in order to help them. And on the flip side, if you break that trust, they're not going to be responsive to the efforts that you have to help them anymore. So if somebody comes in right now, thankfully Omicron cases are lower, but there's a time when COVID cases are higher. Even still, let's say you have a cough and you go to your physician and you're there for the cough and they want to talk about your weight, right? Oh, hey, I saw you 6 months ago and you've gained 10 pounds like everybody else has, right? No, doctor, hey, I'm here for my cough. So can we talk about the cough today? So number one, we need to meet patients where they are. And that doesn't mean trying to impose our will or our desires onto that patient, but understand what's that person there to see you for in the moment that day, right? So address people for what they are coming to you for. And then this idea of asking for permission and also focusing on lifestyle habits, right? So instead of coming at a patient and saying, hey, I've noticed again, you're 350 pounds and this is kind of where you've been. What are you doing to work on it? Maybe just asking generally about lifestyle habits, right? I talk to all of my patients, what type of nutrition are you involved in? What type of activities are you doing? How is your stress? Or coming at it from that less aggressive angle, right? So asking about things like stress or how's your lifestyle or, hey, how has COVID affected you? Are some non-judgmental ways to do it. And if someone doesn't want to talk about it, don't talk about it. It doesn't have to come up at every visit. And that can be a challenge because as physicians, we want to seize every opportunity, right, to make an improvement in someone's health. But it might not be the time every visit to harp on somebody's weight.
Right. And I understand, like, if you have a cough, you don't maybe mention weight, but what about if their weight is directly related to the reason they're there? Like, I'm thinking about Dr. Stefan Messer, who's an orthopedic doctor, who says, your knees and your hips don't care about your feelings. And so, you know what I mean? Like, is there a way to say it compassionately so that they can make the connection that, maybe they don't need the knee surgery if they're willing to maybe lose some weight?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think part of that is listening to concern. So allowing someone to talk and fully tell the story. And it might be that they bring that up themselves, like, oh, hey, I realized that if I was 20 pounds lighter, maybe this wouldn't be so painful for me. So that might come from the patient themselves. And creating an environment where they feel supported and listened to, and also making sure to first address the condition like the knee pain the way that you would for any other patient. So for any other patient, maybe who didn't also have obesity or overweight, the same workup, the same type of physical exam, the same history taking, the same x-rays or MRI or imaging. And I bring this up because something that we don't realize is that there's this phenomenon of weight bias and discrimination in healthcare. And unfortunately, people who experience weight discrimination, even if they don't already have obesity or overweight, are 2.5 to 3 times more likely to actually go on develop it in the future. And what happens is, as we make people feel bad about their weight, we drive those people away. So again, they don't get the same type of screening tests at routine exams. They aren't treated the same way that people who don't have that excess weight might be treated. And they have higher rates of depression, suicide, etc. Poor physical health outcomes, poor mental health outcomes. And we as doctors spend less time with people who have obesity than we do with people who don't. So let's first make sure that we're treating people with obesity the same way in terms of their actual knee pain or cough or medical condition as we would people who don't have obesity. And then once we've addressed it in that way, and there's that trust that's been established, I think we can say, hey, there's this, have you considered that change in lifestyle may help? Or I understand that, if you reduce the weight a little bit and I can help you with that, this may help with your pain, and offering solutions, right?
Well, Teresa made a comment. I love that you were talking about having obesity rather than being obese. It puts it more in line with being a medical condition than being treated than a flaw to feel shame about. And I learned that from a different obesity specialist, Dr. Jamie Kane, and he corrected my language a long time ago that you don't say somebody is obese, you say somebody has obesity. But, I don't think that's limited to just people that struggle with weight. Because, I used to be a respiratory therapist, and they would just call patients by whatever condition. Like they'd say, oh, the gallbladder in room 12. Do you know what I mean? Like it was like shorthand. Like, I don't think it's always meant to be a shaming thing for obesity. That's what we'd say. Hey, the knee in 104, that's how they talk in hospitals, kind of. I'm not saying it's right, but I've seen that done with other conditions where they don't say Mrs. Jones, they say, the liver patient, I don't know. I'm just saying that you hear that in the medical community, but she's right. We have to change the language. But I would imagine, Dr. Sobia, if somebody's seeing you as an obesity specialist, you probably can talk about it because that's probably why they made the appointment, right?
Exactly. Yeah. They're there because they want to be, right? And they've signed up to be, and there's that desire to change already. No one can force you to come see me. You're not coming to see me for some other reason. So yes, and what I like to do is actually take cues from my patients and listen to how they like to talk about their weight. So, if they come in using the term obesity and they feel comfortable and they see me using it, then okay. If they want to talk about having extra weight or being bigger or being heavier, those are some terms that people might prefer that have less judgment associated with them. And even the term obesity and overweight, I don't actually like these words very much. I somewhat feel uncomfortable saying the term obesity, even though it's the accepted medical terminology. I think there's something about the way it feels and the way it comes out of the mouth that I wish there were a more empathetic way, a more empathetic term for obesity.
Maybe round around the edges. I mean, because isn't it true though that they don't even call it like morbid obesity anymore? They call it class 1, class 2, class 3.
That's exactly right. And that's, part of the solution is the language. So like you said, talking about people having obesity, just like people having heart disease or diabetes, and then not using terms like morbid or severe obesity or extreme obesity, but like you said, class 1, class 2, class 3 based on BMI. So it makes it more medicalized, more objective, as opposed to having that feeling or that subjectivity associated with it.
We have a question from Sandra, who's watching live. Nice to see you here, Sandra. What do you think of the prescription weight loss drug phentermine that used to be half of the fen-phen combination?
Yeah, so I think that we can take a step back and just look at weight loss drugs in general and surgery in general as treatments. And I think, in keeping with our theme, I think that there can also be judgment associated with using drugs and surgery. And I'll tell you from my own example, I used to think back when I was first learning about lifestyle medicine that weight loss drugs, including phentermine and weight loss surgery, were cheating, right? That this was just a cop out, like, hey, I did it. I was able to lose weight without medication surgery, therefore everybody can. And that was a judgment, right? So I had to learn, and through my experience and education and talking to people and meeting people with obesity, that it's not the case, and it's not the same for everybody. So phentermine is one of the FDA approved medications we have for weight loss. That is not part of the combo is a part of the combo that did not cause the heart valve problem. And I know you've had experience with the medication fen yourself. It is one of the most widely prescribed medications for weight loss. It has long-term safety and efficacy studies, and even at very low doses can be effective for people. And my personal practice is that I am not a pill mill. I don't just hand out medications to everybody who comes in, but for the right person, they are appropriate, and phentermine being one of them. And the key is that it works in combination with lifestyle change. So making those appropriate dietary and physical activity changes, the medication can be that step or that tool that people really benefit from.
That's great. We have a nice comment from Chef Dell. He says, what about phrasing the comment like, you carry more weight than is healthy for your body?
Yeah, that's definitely one way to say it. Or focusing on, carrying weight and thinking about how to optimize or improve function is another way to think about it too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would think if somebody has excess weight, I think they probably know, right? I mean, it's not a surprise for most people.
Yeah, generally. And there are some people who are in denial, and we see this with children a lot. And I think parents of young children especially are often more worried about their child having underweight, right? So there's this push I see a lot with parents of young children to get the children to eat more, be on the higher end of that, BMI scale for age. BMI percentile is what we use in children. I don't see a lot of parents who express a concern that their child has excess weight or that it's a problem. I often see them concerned that they don't have enough and wanting them to eat more, which is really interesting.
Yeah. So do you recommend not weighing children, or is there sometimes useful information from weighing a person? Because I know you can buy these cards now where you hand them to your doctor and say, do not weigh me.
Yeah, I think it can be useful, but it is just one piece of the puzzle. Weight and BMI and waist circumference have to be taken in conjunction with the bigger picture. So lab values are useful as well, and also lifestyle behaviors and the whole story of where did you come from, right? So, I might see someone who is 300 pounds. And I think it's, easy to look at that person and judge and say, oh, well, you have excess weight, must be unhealthy. What if that person started at 400, right? What if they've already lost 100 pounds? And so now they're actually in a much better place compared to where they were previously. And so it's that whole picture and thinking again comprehensively about the lifestyle. And we know that having reduced that weight, even though it's still not in the quote unquote normal or ideal range, that might not be the goal. So to say that everyone has to get down to 120 or 150 or less than 200 is not the goal for everyone. And weight is just one piece of the puzzle there.
Right. Roseanne, who's watching live, says, can you comment on genetics and weight? Dr. Doug Lyle, who comes on about once a month, says weight is about 80% heritable.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I think this is something that we're going to learn more about as time goes on. We have a number of mutations that contribute differently to your weight, and the most common one being FTO. And that's present, and I believe 30% of the population, and don't quote me on the numbers here, but FTO gene mutation can predispose to weight gain, although it's not a lot. It's only maybe 5 or 6 pounds, depending on the studies that you read. On the other hand, it's actually more common to have the mutation of the FTO gene that is protective against weight gain. So more people in the population have the gene mutation that prevents them from gaining that extra weight, right? So there's genetics involved for sure, but it's working in both directions. And we also know, based on this thing called single nucleotide polymorphisms, or SNPs, SNP, that people handle different macronutrients differently. And I know this is something you talk about in your own story about, the added fats versus having a more starch predominant diet. People handle those macronutrients differently. And so coming back to this idea, because somebody has it figured out for themselves and that works for that person, that might not be the answer for the next person. And again, there's a judgment that's inherent in saying, well, I did this thing and it works for me, therefore you have to do this thing, and it's definitely going to work for you. So yeah, genetics is definitely there, and it's definitely part of it. I think at some level we're all programmed to gain weight and develop metabolic disease in the setting of excess food intake, and we live in this obesogenic environment. So if we are part of the environment that we live in today, we are just set up for it. We really are.
That's absolutely. I'm sure you're probably familiar with the book, The Pleasure Trap.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we didn't evolve in this environment. We evolved in an environment of scarcity, and it's like we live in a 7-Eleven perpetually now.
Yeah, these mechanisms are supposed to be protective, right? but we're not. We don't live in that state of being. We're not in the wild anymore, most of us.
Yeah. Apple says, I don't like the term overweight either. So, I mean, maybe they could just call it puppy. Everybody likes the word puppy. You have puppy, and there's a viewer named Latif wondering, do you also work with people that have the opposite problem, that might be underweight?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, lifestyle and nutrition counseling absolutely can go both ways. So to talk about healthy lifestyle changes, I can do that for people who have underweight as well.
So you talked about people respond differently to macronutrients. Is there a test for that? Because even though not everyone maybe has to go as low fat as me, I can't imagine anyone thriving in a like a really high fat environment. At least I don't see it with people that have excess weight, to just eat like tons of oil and coconut oil and things like that.
Yeah, we call it the ketogenic diet. Yeah. So it's interesting because I think we're at this really cool place with microbiome and genetics, and this crossroads where we're just starting to understand, how do we know what is optimal for the individual, and their cultural, ethnic background, the other lifestyle factors, other health conditions, how do they all play into this? And there are some really cool projects with industry. You might have heard of a company who I won't mention. I'm not here to promote any companies. There's a company who's working with some really prestigious physicians in the field and some really high-end academic institutions, and they've developed a product that helps test how people respond to these different macronutrients based on a standard meal. So I like this as an example of, it's like industry meets academics, which I think is the future of research in this area. But I need to stress that it's in development, right? It's still research and we're still learning. So I don't think that we're at the point where it's prime time where I can just say, like, here's a simple test I can do in my office. And I can tell you what type of diet is going to work for you as far as macronutrient composition. There are these products out there that are, being investigated and that you can buy into, but it is also like, a research tool, right? So it's being developed sort of in real time at the same time that it's being sold to people is how I understand it. So, that's ongoing. And I think at some point we'll be able to get there where we can tell people, here's the optimal solution for you for macros. And the same thing with supplements too, like prebiotics, probiotics. I don't think we're at a point yet where we can say, hey, here's this probiotic that you can take that's going to fix your microbiome and get you to a place where you can get to optimal health and optimal weight. But that's an area that's just expanding rapidly right now. And I'm really optimistic in the future to see what that holds.
Great, thank you. What's your take on weight loss surgery, both the kind that are permanent and the kind that are temporary?
Yeah, I had to go through a personal evolution with my attitude towards something like weight loss surgery. So if you asked me this question 10 years ago, my answer would have been that we're taking a lifestyle problem and we're turning it into a surgical problem, right? And so there's the inherent judgment in it again, because for me, it was a simple lifestyle change. Simple, but not easy, but simple. Not the case for everybody out there. And so I've seen plenty of people who have had the surgeries, of which there are several, and it's either worked or not worked because of the associated lifestyle changes that were made. So it's a tool that can really help jumpstart the changes for people. But as long as you're making those lifestyle changes in nutrition and physical activity, your sleep, your stress, etc., that's just a step in the right direction to get you started and can really jumpstart the process for people. And they have completely changed their lives and been able to sustain the weight loss. But a significant number of people who have weight loss surgery regain the weight if they haven't made those changes. So it's not actually just a cop out. It's not just an easy solution. It's not just, hey, I'm going to have surgery and everything's going to be great. First of all, there's, depending on what people have, it can be a big procedure, right? And you're in the hospital and you have a recovery period. You can feel sick. There are complications. You have to take vitamins for the rest of your life, or you're going to develop nutritional deficiencies. So this is a big commitment, and there's a big process of screening to go through before you even have the procedure. So that's a commitment in itself, and it's just the beginning of a lifetime of commitments and changes. So yeah, I think for the right person, it is a good tool.
But just having the surgery, not willing to make lifestyle changes is not recommended, right?
Unfortunately, it's not going to work. Yeah. And hopefully, and I don't mean this again to judge, but hopefully we can identify the people who won't be able to make sustainable lifestyle changes before they have the surgery, because it's a shame to undergo such a procedure and not have it work. That's a failure. You don't want to have a procedure and have it not work. So we need to, and I think surgeons do a really good job of identifying who's a good candidate based on the changes they've been able to demonstrate before surgery.
What about the ones that aren't permanent? Like, I don't know if I have the names correctly, but there's something like a balloon, and there's one where I don't know what it's called, but like you eat and then you actually empty the food out right afterwards.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, like, what about those? Do those have any use?
Yeah. And again, I think in the right context for the right person, they can. I think the idea of eating and emptying the stomach, you really have to be working very closely with a provider to work on what are you actually putting in your body. And I don't think it's the permanent end goal to be able to put whatever you want into your body and be able to just, purge it or empty it out through a hole in your stomach and not suffer the consequences, because we don't learn and grow from that experience of how to live a healthful lifestyle, right? Which ultimately, and we keep coming back to it, that's what works. These other procedures are just a tool. They're not a solution on their own. So unless those changes can also be made at the same time through that close relationship with your physician, unfortunately, I don't think it's the best long-term solution.
Great, thank you. There's a question from Apple. What societal changes need to happen to impact the obesity epidemic?
Oh, so many. So where to start? Um, Food and the availability of good food, healthful food, fresh produce, right? So incentivizing grocery stores to be in neighborhoods where fresh produce may not be accessible, right? We have food deserts, especially where I live in the DC area. There are inequities in access to fresh produce, right? So if you're the only place where you can go grocery shopping and you don't have a car and you don't want to take public transportation, especially when there's a pandemic going on, all you have is to shop at a store that has, potato chips and packaged processed food and animal products and things in cans. That's all you can get to. That's what you're going to eat. And that's not your fault, but it's not optimal for your health. So how do we incentivize grocery stores to be in these areas and make fresh produce accessible? It's not necessarily more expensive, but it might not be easy to get to. How do we address food advertising, right? Especially to young children, and things like having toys and happy meals and associating all this joy and fun with eating these food-like products that are not optimal for health is another place to start. Taxation, right? We've taxed other things that are not good for our health that might make it harder to afford them. So things like cigarettes, alcohol. Should we have a tax on sugar sweetened beverages or foods that are not good for our health? That's another place we can start. School lunches. Chef, do you notice I could just keep going on about this topic? School lunches are another place to start. And even the food that we serve in hospitals, right? So to inpatients after they've just undergone bariatric surgery, right? What are we giving patients to eat? After having your heart surgery, should your breakfast be bacon and eggs the next day? Having McDonald's in the hospital, Dunkin' Donuts in the hospital. These are all things that absolutely can be addressed. And finally, I think culturally, not having to associate food with reward, right? Finding other ways to celebrate and enjoy our lives, enjoy spending time with people, and not making cakes and cookies and pastries the reward or the thing that makes time with your friends and family enjoyable.
Right. Do you give your patients a meal plan or teach them about a plant-based diet? How does that part of your services work?
Yeah, absolutely. So treatment for my patients is completely customized to the individual. So I don't have set meal plans that are made ahead of time. I try to work with what people are already eating, where they are, and what changes they want to make and how quickly. So we come up with more like lists of foods together or recipes, and I share recipe books and websites with them depending on what they're looking for. I have resources available already, and working with them to adapt current recipes and foods that they're already eating. So depending on where each person is, I sort of like to meet them where they are and with what they're willing to do, because I think it can be hard. While the idea of a preset meal plan is attractive in some ways, not everyone's ready to jump right in and say, oh yeah, I'm gonna have oatmeal for breakfast, kale salad for lunch, and bean tacos for dinner. Like not everybody is ready to get there off the bat. So I really try to meet people where they are and work with them there.
When you were talking about what needs to change, I was thinking that when I went to college, which was like a long time ago, 1977, at the University of Pennsylvania, I don't know if it's still there, but the Children's Hospital had a McDonald's in the lobby.
Oh, at CHOP?
Yep.
Yeah, so I actually did my training there, and there is no longer a McDonald's in the lobby that I
Yay. I mean, I thought that was the craziest thing ever. It's like, here, this is what got you sick, so let's just keep you sick.
Yeah, and hook them while they're young, right? And that's the strategy. It's all been developed to hook people. Yeah, not anymore. They're still cookies and cakes. I have to say they have these killer chocolate cupcakes, and like I can still associate going there with those chocolate cupcakes. Like how sad is that, right? So I remember that. They're not vegan. Before I was vegan.
Yeah, BV. Amy's saying,
Yeah.
Amy says, what about warning labels on processed food? That's not a bad idea. It's on cigarettes.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think certain foods we might be getting there. Like we know that processed meats are class 1 carcinogen, right? So we put warning labels on other carcinogens. So especially for something like sausage or bacon, those processed red meats, that might not be a bad idea. And the calorie counts too, right? The calorie counts actually help. I believe there's data that suggests that when people see like, oh, this Starbucks drink has, 400 calories and it's this big and it's just the drink that I'm having with my breakfast, they think twice about getting that beverage. So yeah, that can help. Information, right? Information as such, without a judgment attached to it, can be empowering.
That's neat. Did you notice any changes when you went on the plant-based diet?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I sort of mentioned this, when I first went, vegan, there was still a lot of processed food. And because I was exercising a lot, I thought I needed protein shakes and protein bars all the time. And I'm eating all this seitan and tofu. And I thought sugar was bad for me. So I wasn't eating a lot of fruit. So like that doesn't look like a very good diet. And so it was only after going more whole foods plant-based, getting rid of this concept of having to have protein shakes and protein bars all day, eating fruit as much as I wanted and not feeling bad or guilty or fearing that it was sugar. That's when I was able to get off of the medications, like the asthma medication, the allergy medication. My skin improved, my energy, my mood improved. And that's when I really got my reflux under control, because I was taking medications for gastroesophageal reflux since I was a girl, since I was 10 or 12. So you don't want to be on these medications forever. And I was on that path, but really through going whole foods plant-based and addressing the other lifestyle components, that's when my health really improved.
Nice. One of the questions that almost every guest gets, whether they're plant-based or not, is what do you eat in a day?
So let me tell you, this is a good one. So I always like to start the morning. I usually have oatmeal, and I'll make steel cut oats in the Instant Pot. And I'll put some cinnamon, vanilla. I started putting the banana into the Instant Pot, so it actually cooks with the oats and is super delicious. And I'll put fresh fruit on it, maybe some nuts or peanut butter. So I'm not no nuts. But what I just started doing is buckwheat, because my husband is Russian, which I know is not popular right now, but hey, he's just a human. And so his family, they eat buckwheat, and I really like it. So I'm trying to cook buckwheat, but I made a terrible mess out of the buckwheat this week, and it's mushy. So maybe you can give me some tips on how to cook the buckwheat better.
Did you make it in the Instant Pot?
I did. So I don't know if I put too much water or cooked it too long, but it just came out like this mush.
Can you do it in a rice cooker? Because I find that my grains come out a little bit better in a rice cooker than they do in the Instant Pot.
Okay, I will do that. And that's how my mother-in-law does it. So learning from the experts here. So I might have to get a rice cooker just for the buckwheat. So I'll have the buckwheat, I had it this morning with a banana and blueberries and some soy milk. For lunch, I like to make some kind of bowl. I might have like broccoli and beans or tofu and some sort of grain like rice, quinoa. I might have some toast. Actually, I'm not anti-toast. I'll eat it and put some hummus on top. And for dinner, I like to make a big salad. So I'll chop up some kale, different types of greens, different types of vegetables, and I'll put some beans or chickpeas on there, a little bit of dressing. I'm not against store-bought dressings, because I am not spending my whole day cooking. I like cooking, but a little bit of store-bought dressing, as long as you're paying attention to what's in it, is okay if it gets you to eat that whole bowl of salad. So I like to front load my calories and the calorie dense food morning and lunch, and then have that lighter meal, that salad, at the end of the day. And part of that is because we process those calories and our insulin sensitivity is best in the morning. So eat it up in the morning and have less later in the day, and especially stop eating a couple of hours before bedtime.
I love that you said you're not anti-toast.
Yeah. Yeah. I eat toast, avocado toast, hummus, and tomatoes on toast. I do eat some olive oil, not a ton, but I might put some olive oil on toast. So yeah, it's okay.
So Barb says she also makes it in the rice cooker, and Sherry says if it's mushy, it's probably cooked too long, or maybe, like you said, too much water.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to experiment with the buckwheat a little bit, but it tastes great. I mean, the flavor is just delicious. So when you get bored of the oatmeal, buckwheat is a nice way to mix it up for breakfast.
Yeah. Leslie says, my endocrinologist keeps telling me to go low carb because my glucose numbers are elevated. What are your thoughts on low carb, high carb for blood glucose? Well, mastering diabetes, that's all they eat is carbs, and they're
Yeah.
diabetic and have great numbers.
Yeah, exactly. So I can't speak to the individual, but as far as general principles go, we know that insulin resistance and having high blood sugar is multifactorial. And yeah, it's a quick fix to just stop eating carbs or stop eating glucose, and your blood sugar will not be elevated. But it doesn't address the underlying insulin resistance. And that has a lot to do also with how much fat, and particularly saturated fat, we're eating. So as you know from the Mastering Diabetes guys, they're going to tell you to really cut out that fat and cut out saturated fat and eat healthful whole plant foods that have carbs in them, because the carbs aren't necessarily what's causing the problem. We don't want to have those refined carbs, those refined sugars, those refined grains, because those can cause the spikes to happen. So looking at things like total fat and saturated fat intake, and looking at the big picture too. Would you benefit from a change in physical activity? More fruits and vegetables are great. Sleep and stress are also going to be important when it comes to metabolic health. And is there a need, or would you benefit from losing weight, not knowing you as an individual, just throwing all these things out there?
Great, thanks. What about exercise? Where do you stand on that? I'm guessing you probably do it yourself.
Oh, I'm a little bit of an exercise buff. I think that this is, there are sort of like misconceptions, I think, about exercise. So in the weight loss arena specifically, I think that people assume that if they just exercise more, that's going to lead to more weight loss compared to the changes in our nutrition. And we have data that suggests that nutrition can actually account for up to 80% of weight loss, and the exercise might play a much smaller role of up to 20%. Weight loss is optimized when we do both of these things together. So if you're looking to just lose a bunch of weight fast, as fast as you can, maybe not always best, but if your goal is, hey, I'm going to aggressively try to lose weight, it is that cardiovascular exercise, and walking counts, right? Walking counts. This doesn't mean you have to go running or swimming or bicycling. It counts to go for a walk. It counts to garden. There are different ways to get the activity, and that cardio, sort of like moderate intensity, sustained for a longer period of time, depending on how much you can do, is going to give you the most bang for your buck in the beginning. When you get into the maintenance, weight loss maintenance phase, that's when resistance exercise actually takes over in importance, because over time you get too efficient. You become too good at cardio, right? You get too good at exercising. So you need to do exercises that are more inefficient for your muscles in order to continue to burn enough calories. And that's where resistance training really helps. Personally, I do a combination of both, and I love it all. Anything, everything that is physical activity, like, please sign me up. I am there. And the health benefits go beyond just weight loss and mental health. Cancer risk reduction, you name it. There are so many benefits to exercise.
Yep. Thank you. And Sandra said, what kind of toast do you use? What kind of bread?
So I use the Ezekiel toast, and that's like a whole sprouted bread. It's not ground into flour. I don't know how they make it. They take the grains and sprout them and like mash them into bread. I don't know. I usually find it in the frozen section, and then you refrigerate it. And I like that. The taste and the texture are different. So, but I have to say, I will occasionally, we will just buy like fresh bakery bread, like sourdough, whatever's at the bakery. And I'm not afraid of it. It's okay to have that. Sometimes I just don't eat like a whole loaf every day, right? And I love baguette. And when I want baguette, I'll have baguette. But, I'm not eating the whole thing every day.
It seems there's some people though that can't moderate certain foods, and bread
Yeah.
might be one of them for some people.
Yeah. So find either the toast that works for you. Like I said, Ezekiel, I don't feel bad about eating, more than 2 pieces in a day. I think it's fine. And then there are ways to maybe avoid some of the things that you feel like you don't have control over. Maybe don't bring it into the house. Maybe just have it when you're out.
Yeah, that's good strategy. Where do you stand on emotional eating / food addiction?
Yeah, it exists. So that's something that we have to really get deep into with patients, and they might benefit from the help of a mental health professional, depending on what's underlying the emotional eating or the food addiction, what's driving it. So really working to understand what is sort of the root cause. We can do things like cognitive behavioral therapy to understand what that is. And coming up with strategies how to replace the eating behavior with a behavior that's more constructive is another strategy. So when I am going to eat a bag of M&Ms, can I instead go for a walk or journal or meditate and replace one behavior with another that's going to move me towards my goal, right? Identify that goal and identify behaviors that move you towards it versus ones that take you away from it. And that's what we're here to work with you on.
Great, thanks. There's a question. How do you target stubborn fat, which is a result of buildup of toxins?
Yeah. Stubborn fat, the targeted fat loss is not something that we're particularly good at, unfortunately. So when people talk about, oh, this tea or this method or this detox is going to target belly fat, I'm not aware from the medical literature that there's like one thing that's going to make belly fat go away more than another. For example, like one particular tea or detox, it's like you lose weight and the fat is going to come from different places. And some of that's going to be, fat for your arms or subcutaneous fat from your belly, or visceral fat, which is, inside surrounding the organs or different parts of our body. That's driven by different factors, including hormonal factors, like women carry men differently than men do, based on hormones and their sex, right? So some of those factors are out of our control, but losing weight or reducing the total amount of body fat in general is going to help it come off of, those certain areas as a whole.
I think Doggy wants to be on show.
Do you hear her?
That's okay. We love dogs. Deborah says, do you recommend fasting to your patients to lose weight?
The right patient, it can help. Yeah. And patients will sometimes come in already with that idea of like, oh, hey, I do intermittent fasting. And I'm like, you know what? Great. Keep doing it. Like, you like it. It's working for you. It helps you control how much you're taking in during the day. Then absolutely. I like to offer a variety of solutions for my patients. And quite frankly, again, people come in and they already have ideas of things they want to try. It's a matter of wanting to do it with guidance in a way that's sort of supervised, and with assistance to make sure it's done in a healthful way and not in a dangerous way, right? Because we can do things very dangerously. We can fast in a way that's dangerous for us. So Yeah, absolutely. For the right person, it absolutely can work.
Thank you. Connie says, any suggestions for a friend of mine, mid 60s, who's told he has chronic fatigue syndrome?
Yeah, so definitely need to work with, his own individual physician on that. And then looking at what lifestyle factors, what are things that help improve energy or help him feel good or be able to get out of bed during the day, right? And um, addressing the domains of lifestyle medicine may or may not give him some benefit, but it's at least worth looking into, right? So looking at the nutrition, looking at what type of physical activity is possible, because he may not be able to just jump out of bed and go running, right? With that type of condition. Stress, sleep, what's the relationship with sleep and rest? What is any relationship with substances like alcohol and drugs? And examining relationships. So those are the pillars of lifestyle medicine, and really finding a practitioner who can dive into each of those specifically may help.
Great. Well, thanks. And where can people learn more about you? I've put all the links there, but do you spend most of your time on Instagram or Facebook or your website?
Yeah, I'm on a little social media sabbatical right now, It's just figuring things out, unplugging, taking my own advice and taking a break. So I'm sparingly there, but mostly I'm on Instagram. And my website is www.plantedhealth.org. You can email me at connect@plantedhealth.org. I will say I'm not taking new patients right now, but you can still contact me.
Great. Well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure getting to know you, and thank you for being plant-based and helping your patients be healthier.
Thank you. This was so much fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks to all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. Please come back in 3 hours. We have a bonus show with Thomas Allen from California Balsamic using 7 Herb Italian.